In the beginning, there was the Y2K aesthetic, and everything was cool, sleek, and both futuristic looking and dated at the exact same time. The future was digital, and it looked bright. But then a wombo combo of the Matrix, Columbine shooting, George W. Bush, 9/11, and the Iraq and Afghan war sent the world spiraling out of control. Gone was the optimism surrounding the brighter future people thought the new millennium and internet would usher forth. Because the future was here, and the future was shit.
So, before I actually begin this video, let me just state one thing first. I am, by no means, an aestheticologist, or whatever the real word equivalent of that would be. I mean, I don't even know who Miss Aesthetic is, or where she shops, but I do find this particular topic to be, well, fairly interesting. And it's not really discussed much, at least not in the circles that I'm a part of, with the exception of Jamie Faith, who is really rad and is a part of the reason why I made this video. So she has a Twitter account on stuff from the early 2000s, which I will be linking below, so check that out. So without further ado, I don't know how to start these kinds of videos. I don't have like a swing-in kind of thing. So I'm just gonna quote the immortal Mr. Devil May Cry person, one of them, and just say, let's get motivated. Ooh.
Even before stuff like the US Patriot Act, which, by the way, is actually an acronym for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism, which is something so bafflingly stupid that it really could have only been thought up during the Bush administration. The spotless veneer of the Y2K aesthetic was giving away to something a bit darker that mirrored a disassociative, alienating digital present through futuristic settings and visuals rather than pining for better times to come. The Wachowski sisters' box office smash hit film, The Matrix, is a very clear and early example of this sort of bastardization of the Y2K style that would become more prevalent in the mid to late 2000s. The bright and varied colors are gone, replaced with duller grays and dark blacks. The image is just as refined and as sleek as ever, but diametrically opposed to the Y2K aesthetic. A yang to the Y2K aesthetic's yin, essentially. An even earlier example of this sort of metamorphosis can be found in the likes of the 1998 cult classic hit anime Serial Experiments Lain. The Navi, the show's equivalent to PCs and Macs, have UIs that are both familiar and alien to the general UI of the time, being more refined than just about anything on the market in the real world, but also being cold and soulless looking, just like the world surrounding Lain. But the more she delves into the digital world, the physical one starts to deteriorate around her, both figuratively and literally.
Alongside this, other art styles were starting to form up, such as metal art, which I believe is also called deepcore or depthcore. I will write a comment, a condescending one about myself in there, which was derived from the title of a book that was written by Andres F. Ronbaum, that guy, and Andreas Lindholm. But while these things were coming out in the 90s, they wouldn't really gather much traction until, well...
yeah, that. Hence why a pal of mine on Twitter, hi Scott, dubbed this aesthetic 9/11 punk, which certainly fits well.
Basically, the mood across the country was, well, grim, to say the least. And that started to show up in all sorts of different forms of media and, well, technology too.
A great way to see how things have changed since the late 90s is by looking at old gaming consoles from before and after the year 2000. You went from consoles that were either pretty cute looking, like the Dreamcast and the N64, or just kind of utilitarian, like the PlayStation and the earlier standard models of the Sega Saturn. But come 2001, you get these darker, more mysterious console designs with ad campaigns done by David Lynch of all people. Even the BIOS screens went from to. Like, even Nintendo jumped on this shit with their own Cubo de Juego. The games being churned out at the time were also a bit more forward-thinking when regarding the digital revolution. The spectacle of the early internet was basically over, and the reality of instantaneous information, disinformation, filtering, and control over such things had set in, and were also brought into question. This would be the background that would set the stage for games like Deus Ex and Metal Gear Solid 2. Around the time, the interwebs were also going through a phase, with websites and media players looking more streamlined than the general anarchy of the 1990s internet, all while retaining a dark and edgy cyber vibe that was uniquely popular during this period. Aside from The Matrix, though, popular cinema in the early 2000s wasn't really down with the cool kids, but there were some exceptions, such as Spielberg's 2002 film Minority Report, based on the 50s Philip K. Dick novel of the same name. Basically, the film chronicles Tom Cruise in the 2050s, who has been predicted to kill a man in the future by an invasive and totalitarian government program that strips people of their general civil liberties, under the guise of public safety.
Look, I don't know much about the production of this film or anything of that sort, so it could be completely coincidental that this is, or at least seems like a sort of satire of the recently passed, U.S. Patriot Act. But, I mean, some connections can be made.
I'd argue, though, that the film does represent some of those worries surrounding that massive, invasion of privacy, even if coincidentally. Though I do think the movie is pretty blatantly worried about the rise of misinformation, alongside the technological boom that was, and still is, going on. Yet as time passed and the visual aesthetic just became the norm, the underlying meaning behind it just kind of vanished. The look was everywhere, but that was about it, really. Games like Half-Life 2, Breakdown, and Fear, and even House of the Dead 4 use this dark and gray, washed-out, post-9/11 future fuck look without really saying anything with it. We basically went from,
although set in the close future or alternative present, much of the problems you see here are applicable to our current society, and represents our disposition towards our rapidly advancing online world.
to
We live in the gray dimension where everyone, and I mean everyone, wears trench coats like a school shooter, or has that proto-tech wear shit going on with them, like it's sorta tactical looking too, but I don't know where one look starts and the other ends. Oh, and Alienware laptops are cool too.
Honestly, the only game that came out at around the same time that sort of adopted this look and even attempted to say anything was From Software's 2004 cult classic, Metal Wolf Chaos. Although it's played up for laughs by a distinctly non-Western developer, the game is a scathing mockery of American jingoism that was prevalent at the time.
To a lot of you outsiders and foreigners who weren't really there at the time when the Twin Towers fell, this might seem like an exaggeration of American jingoism, but, once 9/11 happened, it sort of unlocked something in the conservative or neocon mindset that made them start doing shit like this.
I want you to bless him. Speak a blessing to him. Would you do that? Raise your hand. You speak a blessing to him. Do some warfare over him. Some more Varabaka Shikaramoko Satarabahaya.
And that sort of fucked up America First, God chose my infallible president bullshit is still very much alive and well in America. In fact, it has always been alive and well in America, even prior to independence, but they were never quite as vocal about it until...
Hey, we might actually be able to do this if we work properly. Oh!
that.
Oh, we did it!
So, that kind of begs the question, though. What happened to this aesthetic style of internet yore?
Well, like anything that becomes relatively mainstream and starts to move away from its original meaning or intent, it starts to fade away into the background. A pretty recent example of this is with Vaporwave. What was a sort of criticism of hollow consumerism and the prevalence of nostalgia in modern culture just became a look and a trend that just about every popular YouTuber circa 2016 has as their aesthetic. Space between letters and all. By now, though, no one is going for that vibe anymore.
Honestly, though, I'm just gonna be real with you here. I'm so fucking glad it's dead. I hate the look of the 80s so much. It's actually unreal.
Same thing happened with the techno-pessimistic vibes of the time, and by around 2008 or 2009, it was basically lost to time, much like the point of this video. It was then replaced by the current visual trend, which I dub sterile minimalist internet hellfuck, which is why, basically, all websites for the past 10 years look indistinguishable from one another.
Internet anarchy is dead. Style is dead. Corporate design structures are king. Long live the new king.
Well, folks, that's about it for me regarding whatever this video was about. Don't worry, it got lost on me too. But you know who else is incredibly lost? My wonderful Patreon patrons who allow me to buy a single grilled cheese with bacon sandwich per month, which is all I need to keep going. First up, we have our cool cucumbers. We have 4 high heels, FT, and L Target. Then we have my smoking chimp, Sunderland.
Yas, Queen, yas.
And my IRL Anthony's, Randolph, and Gobrel. Hi, Tom. And thank you all. Also, huge shout out to Web Design Museum, which houses a lot of old archived web pages from way back when. It's what I use to get these images. A link to their website will be in the description as well. From now on, I'm also going to try to find a charity that I believe is worth donating to and put it at the top of the pinned comment, and announce it at the end of every major video of mine. So, today's charity you should donate to is the Okra Project, which helps give resources such as food to Black trans people of color. Donate if you can, or just help spread the word. Thank you. Anyways, that's about it from me today, folks. I will see you when I see you.